Is a movement in Norway to be more Jew-friendly. There's a movement, but they're not in the majority. From what I understand and from what I've been researching the last 2 days, there's a political party that's in the minority. It's the Conservative Party, and they're actually very Jew-friendly. They want to overturn get rid of the ban on kosher slaughter. They're very pro-state of Israel. They like Israel. They're pro, state of Israel. And they feel that the problems today are, like you said, is the multiculturalism. Is another word for we don't want Muslims moving into the neighborhood, right? That is the political party that this guy spoke for. He's part of that movement. There's 400 references to Zionists and Jews in his 1,500-page manifesto. And the guy was Jew-friendly, which, look at the guy. He looks like a total, Aryan. He looks like, his name is Dirk, Hitler. He just looks like an Aryan who would, hate Jews, but his manifesto talks a lot about how, that Europe has focused too hard on the Jew problem, and they really need to be focused on the Muslim problem. They've taken the wrong side in the Middle East, and Israel is not the problem. Israel is the solution. That they've so busy labeling Jews as liberals, they've missed that there's a lot of Jews who are religious and whatever. His whole manifesto is pro-Jewish and it's pro-Zionism. It's pro-state of Israel. And he represents the voice of the Conservative Party. Now, what's interesting here is what Prager was saying, which way we're going to go. The Muslims have taken over Europe, but it's like they're coming in. They're not the majority, but they're making their presence felt. So, what has Europe been doing for the last 30, 40, 50 years?
Letting them do their thing.
Letting them do their thing because they've been all liberal and progressive. It's look at me, I'm Europe, and I'm all liberal and I'm all progressive, and everybody's welcome, everybody come, and they all came. And what happens when there's just it looks like it's too many foreigners? What does a Europe do? Because in their roots...
Well, one thing that's happening is that all the rapes in Norway for the last 5 years are being committed by Muslims.
Exactly, and same thing in Sweden. And I've heard that in Sweden, that what the women do is, because they have blonde hair, is they dye their hair black now because they're afraid that if they go out as blondes, they're going to get raped by these Muslims, because it's called open rape season, which I understand. So they want to push back.
You understand open rape season?
No, I understand why they'd be concerned, and I understand why the whole. Because at the bottom line is, that these European countries, in their core, they're never going to go for this liberalism, multiculturalism. They can only go so far, and when they water down their own country, they're all going to start pushing back. France is going to push back. Spain's going to push back. Germany, my God, they're never going to put up with this. And Norway, of all people, are pushing back. England's going to push back. They're all going to push back. They're all going to push back, and they're going to say, we want to go back to the way we were. Whites only. And I think that's where Europe's going to be. That's where they've been for 1,000 years, and that's where they're going to be. They tried this liberal thing. It didn't work because, in their core, European countries can't stand foreigners. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. Europe certainly got a long history of ethnic cleansing and genocide, so maybe we will have a civil war in parts of Europe as the native Europeans push back against the Muslim immigrants who are multiplying so quickly and taking ever-increasing proportions of the population, and they're much younger than the average age of the native Europeans. So it's going to be a battle for Europe's soul and survival as a Western regime rather than ruled by Islamic law.
Would you call that a civil war? I wouldn't necessarily call that a civil war. I would say that they're just going to make laws banning immigration. They're just going to put a freeze on immigration, period. If you're not part of the EU already, then you're not welcome in. And then they might just start kicking out people who aren't white. And what's that going to look like? It's going to just look like, Europe's going to go back to what it does best.
Well, the Muslims will fight back.
You think so?
Yeah, I think some of them, certainly. So then you'll have
That's
bombs
the first time.
going off.
Oh, that?
Yeah. Terrorism, rampant terrorism. They can make it so expensive that maybe the majority society will back off after hundreds of thousands of people get killed. Well, why do you think of France banning the burqa? Like, we wouldn't do that in the United States.
That's France going back to its roots.
But do you think that's a good idea or a bad idea?
I think it suits France perfectly. France is like one of the leaders of, look how liberal we are. We're liberal. We're progressive. Look at us. You know, and they're so full of shit because when push comes to shove, right? They can't stand the fact that they're being watered, their whole society is being taken over by Sharia law, and they're going to do anything they can to get these people out of there. Make it uncomfortable for them. Make it so that they don't want to move to France. Make it so that they want to leave. You know that there's neighborhoods, there's neighborhoods inside France that police are afraid to go into.
Yeah.
And it's run by, there's like several cities that are run by Sharia law over there. It's ridiculous. See, here's the difference between Jews moving into a country and the Muslims running into a country. We believe in Dina Malchusa Dina.
Observing the law of the land.
You observe the law of the land, right? We have Jewish courts here in America, but what do those courts deal with? They deal with like divorce, they deal with conversion, thank you. They deal with arbitration between two people who think they both own a Sefer Torah, right? They arbitrate these kind of civil things, and you can go to a Beis Din instead of going to taking it to small claims court or some municipal court or whatever. But when it comes to murder, when it comes to rape, arson, theft, things like that, we hand it over to the DA, right? We follow Dina Malchusa Dina. We follow the law of the land. For instance, we talked about this at length last week, and I don't want to get bogged down with it because we spent an hour on it last week. But that whole Levi Aaron case, right?
Yeah.
A Fermi Jew, is accused of killing another Fermi Jew. We're letting the DA in New York handle it, right?
Yeah.
We respect the law of the land. That's not what the Muslims want. When they have something in between, they don't want America touching it. They don't want ever to turn anything over. They want to handle everything themselves and run it by Sharia law. And unfortunately, maybe it's fortunately, in hindsight, the liberals who run all these countries have let them get away with it because they're afraid to stand up. They're afraid to stand up and say no. So what you're going to see now is the conservatives are going to take laws in their own manner. This guy was a conservative. I don't agree with the way he went about doing business. I don't advocate killing 93 people or whatever this guy's mashugana, but I understand where he's coming from. He speaks for hundreds of thousands of people, I'm sure, who have had enough of that, and they want to stand up to the liberals and they want to take their countries back. That's what you're going to hear. It's let's take France back. Let's take Spain back. And the words between it, let's take it away from the Muslims. And at the end of the day, it's going to be lily white back in Europe's going to be lily white, and that's going to be the end of it. What do you think?
Well, it'll be really difficult to expel millions of Muslims, but the thing is, if you make it difficult for them to live there, if you start cracking down on things that are precious to them, then they're going to naturally up and move on their own. So I don't think you're going to need to back trucks up and force Muslims into a truck at the point of a gun. But if France and Spain and Holland insist on the sacredness of their own laws and refuse to be intimidated into watering down their own way of life and their own laws to suit the Muslim minority, then if native Europeans stand up for their own values, then in certain sectors of Europe, certain countries, then Muslims will conclude this is not such a friendly place for us to live. And
you'd think they'd want to leave on their own.
Yeah.
Like they say, you never, there's some companies that never fire anyone. They just make it unbearable for you to stay.
Right.
Right. So you're thinking like that. I think that's what France is doing right now. They're trying to make it